Andrew, it just so happens that you are going to Miami this weekend. So while we wait to get Gaby's audio, tell me, what are you looking forward to seeing this weekend?
This is kind of the appetizer for the 2024 cycle, Battle Miami. It's been, I think this is year 4. This is year 4. If you go back to the past few kind of lists, our top performers, I mean, there are some big time names on there. Eli Holstein, the quarterback that signed with Alabama, he threw down here a few years ago. Shaz Preston was one of his top targets. Last year, I got my first look at Nico Iamaleava. He was out there. Dante Moore was out there. Cormani McClain was out there. So it's kind of a who's who, and everyone cares about 7-on-7 right now. It's a great opportunity to kind of body type, see guys with the eye test, and then just see how they can compete. You're going to get elite defensive backs going up against elite wide receivers. Sometimes it's pretty rare to see that. And for me, it's kind of really about those arms. One guy I'm really excited to see, Julian Sayin, the Alabama commit. He's going to be playing for Team Raw, a new organization. And then you got Bryce Underwood, who's our number 1 ranked quarterback in 2025. So loaded list. I'll be there. Gaby's going to be there. I know Steve Wiltfong. He's currently somewhere over the United States flying down. We'll have full coverage.
And look who's back. Gaby, let's try this one more time. We just talked about it. It's going to be a huge weekend down in Miami. How big could this be for momentum into the 2024 class for the Canes?
Yeah, Emily, I think it could be really big. I mean, looking back to this time last year, this was the event where Miami first got Francis Mauigoa on campus. The first time Jaden Wayne was on campus, meeting with Mario Cristobal, Riley Williams, Malik Bryant, a couple different guys who ended up signing with the Hurricanes. So I think that this can be a sort of foundational weekend for the Hurricanes, just kind of moving forward, transitioning from 2023 to 2024. I mean, Andrew was just talking about all the different guys that are going to be down there. I mean, the expectation is that a lot of those guys, if not all of them, will eventually roll through Coral Gables, sometime Saturday or maybe even Sunday after they're done playing or before they're playing. So it's a very unique opportunity for Miami to just host a ton of talent. I mean, I'm just looking over, glossing my list, and I have 42 members of the top 247 in the class of 2024 who could potentially be, down here in South Florida this week. And that's that I don't have my hands on each and every roster of guys here. So it's going to be really, really big. And, I know that staff is really looking forward to, hosting all those dudes, getting them on campus and showing them what the University of Miami has to offer.
Yeah, it sounds like it's about to be the who's who, not just of the reporters that we have going down there, but the players that you're getting ready to see. Andrew, I'm curious from your perspective, we've seen these All-American games and bowls and everything, but what do you get out of a 7-on-7 tournament like this one?
Well, I just touched on it a little bit before. I mean, you get to see these guys. Sometimes we have measurements on them. Everyone thinks they're 6'5". They're really 6'3". You're just trying to see these guys move around. Like I said, for me, this will probably be all about the quarterbacks. I mentioned Julian Sayin, Bryce Underwood, but also the defensive backs. Ellis Robinson, Charles Lester, KJ Bolden, all those guys are going to be here, and they're going to be going up against elite wide receivers. I mean, when we pour through tape, sometimes those guys don't have a football come their way at all. But in the 7-on-7 setting, there's a ton of passing. You can't run the football. Well, I think you can run once every game, but that's normally like a little sneak. So it's great for us. And what I love is just interacting with the kids, seeing their mindset, mentality. Steve Wiltfong's going to have all the scoop on who's going where, who's feeling this. But again, it's kind of chapter 1 for us in the class of 2024. Signing day 2 weeks away, and then it's all about the juniors.
Yeah, you'll have that notepad out there. Do you have a timer, too, that you're timing them, some measurements, something like that?
I'm interested to see how many steps I take over the course of 10 to 9. So how many miles I walk, we'll see.
Okay, we'll do a segment on next week's show about all your Apple Watch stats. Hey, it would not be a Miami recruiting segment without a Cormani McClain reference. So how do you evaluate this year's class without Cormani McClain as part of it?
I still think this was a really good class for Mario Cristobal. I mean, they attacked a lot of needs. I mean, in the trenches, right? That's where a lot of this thing starts, especially for him. If you hear him talk about it, Coach Cristobal, I mean, they got 2 bookend tackles, Francis Mauigoa, Samson Akinlola. I mean, those are 2 of the 3 best offensive tackle prospects in the class. I feel like they did a good job along the edge, with Jaden Wayne, Ruben Bain. Those are a couple top 100 talents. Collins Akiampong, Joshua Horton out of Georgia is another big body that they got along the line of scrimmage. I think that's a spot where Miami feels like, they really need to get a lot better at. And I think that they accomplished those goals. Signed 4 linebackers in a room that's really, really thin. I think the defensive backs class is still really good. I mean, Damari Brown out of Plantation American Heritage was a big-time target for them that they were able to land on the early signing day. That was a huge win for them. Robert Stafford, an Under Armour All-American. So I do think this staff checked a lot of those boxes. Maybe they still want to need some help at outside receiver, maybe a little bit more along the interior defensive line. But otherwise, I think they're well on their way to flipping over this roster.
Gabby, I would agree with you there on Damari Brown. I think he's a guy that can maybe plug and play coming from American heritage. We know that's the defensive back factory. I know you're probably exhausted from the Cormani McClain stuff. I'm personally a little tapped out on it, but I think there's one more big name in play for the Hurricanes when it comes to 2023 recruits. Nicholas Harbor, the freak of all freaks. You texted me that you thought he might be on campus Monday, but it turns out Mom was there. What's kind of the latest with the Hurricanes as they take a swing at one of the best?
Yeah, look, I mean, it seems like, from a public perception standpoint that Miami's kind of on the outside looking in, but I feel like we've kind of seen how this goes before. Mario Cristobal, these guys kind of work in the shadows, and they're quiet. I believe they're working on Nicholas Harbor. I mean, I talked to him at the Under Armour All-American check-in, and he said that, he's hearing from Mario Cristobal. He's hearing from Jason Taylor, Rod Wright. Yeah, he can play on the offensive side of the ball. But I think that Mario Cristobal, these guys are still working on Nicholas Harbor very, very hard. I mean, I wouldn't be totally surprised if he somehow ended up on campus. I don't know what that looks like in terms of, his last official visit weekend going to Oregon. I'm not sure if it's an unofficial thing where maybe they just get him down or whatever the case may be. But it does seem like they're doing what they got to do to get Nicholas Harbor in town. I remember just talking to him at the Under Armour Media Day. He said he has like a medical internship kind of already lined up here in Miami, if that's a direction that he wants to do. So it seems like him and the family have kind of done their homework if Miami is a spot for him. And I do think at this point, it is one of these spots that they are considering. Maybe a long shot, but I don't know, man. I feel like it's kind of risky to rule out Mario Cristobal and these guys in some of these high-profile recruitments down these final stretches.
Nicholas Harbor would be a major get. Let's go back to this weekend, though. Miami offensive coordinator Josh Gaddis is technically still employed by the U, but has not been around the team lately. Your colleague David Lake is reporting that a move will be made at offensive coordinator, but either way, Gabby, it's the second year in a row the Canes are without an OC at this very event. So what impact does that have on this crucial recruiting weekend?
Yeah, it's interesting. Josh Gaddis, again, still employed by the University of Miami, but I don't think he's really been around the program. It seems like Miami sent the wide receiver analyst, David Cooney, out on the road recruiting. So he was out there offering a couple wide receivers in Texas and in St. Louis and whatnot. It's obviously not ideal. Miami, again, not only an offensive coordinator, but a quarterback's coach 2 years in a row at this event. But I think Mario Cristobal does carry the load. I mean, he is known as a recruiter. That's kind of what he builds his foundation on as a coach, of course. It's definitely something he takes a lot of pride in. So I think anything that they're lacking maybe in that regard, Coach Cristobal can definitely smooth things over or just kind of take it over. I know that they hosted a transfer wide receiver last weekend, and he felt like he was able to get a good enough grasp of the offense just by talking to Coach Cristobal, because at the end of the day, he runs what he runs on offense. So he definitely has a style. Yeah, it's not ideal, of course, and we'll kind of see what happens with this Josh Gaddis situation, but it's definitely one that we're monitoring down here in South Florida.
All right, speaking of monitoring, I'm checking out the chat right now. People have a lot of questions for you, so I'm going to ask you one. Let's see, this one is, does Miami need to make a big jump on the field in order to recruit in 2024 like they did in the 23 cycle?
I think so. I think they need to show, tangible improvement. Obviously they can't go out there, win 5 games again, and then say, hey, we're still rebuilding the roster, new coaching staff, all those different types of things. They might be young. They might play a couple young guys and all that stuff. And I think that could potentially help them if, let's say, the wins don't look the way it needs to. But I do think we need to start seeing, the things like on Saturdays, it needs to change. I mean, there was some really, really embarrassing losses, inexcusable losses here in 2022. I don't think that, they're going to be able to get away with that the way that maybe they did this time around if that were to repeat. So, yeah, I think Miami definitely needs to start showing those improvements that everyone could look at and be like, okay, look, Miami's definitely trending in the right direction. We can hop on board and kind of, start rolling with these guys.
I love it. Gabby, thank you so much for joining us. With the potential coordinator change we talked about, recruiting news, be sure to head to Inside the U for the best reports and analysis.